Hello. Welcome everyone, those in person and those of you online. Just gonna get set up here. Here we are. You good? You can hear me all right? Just ask for those of you online as you join us, if you could ensure that you are muted. If you'd like to take your camera off, we'll be happy to see you and see your smiling face, see who's joined us online, and we could actually give you a glimpse of who's here in person, but door open and a nice breeze is blowing in. The smoke here in Calgary seems to have settled, which is lovely. But first, before we get started, I just want to take a moment and do our land acknowledgement. So I want to acknowledge that we live and gather on the traditional lands of multiple Indigenous people. And in the spirit of respect, reciprocity, and truth, we honor and acknowledge the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, and Tsuut'ina, and the Stoney Nakoda nations. This territory is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3 within the historical Northwest Métis homeland, and all the people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of southern Alberta. But here we are gathered in the Shaganappi Community Hall as well as online. My name is Christine Francoeur. I'm one of the teachers here with the Wellness Through Mindfulness team, and we welcome all of you. We're gonna have a beautiful night with Dr. Leslie Ellestad here with me. We have Phil as well, all three of us here. It's great. So just a reminder, WTM is a volunteer organization, so we thank you all. I know there's a lot of regulars here, as well as those of you online who've continued to donate and support us so that we can continue to bring these events. So if you'd like, you can do a donation online at our website, and I'll put that in the chat for you later. If you'd like to continue to support us, we appreciate it. Doesn't matter if it's $5, $10, $20, whatever you have that can support us helps keep our website going and our ongoing communication. So we're thankful for your support. Also, as you can see, we continue to do a hybrid event, but I want to specifically mention that next month's event, the first one for June, will actually be online only. So for those of you who are here in the hall, just please remember, if you have registered already or plan to register for that first event in June, that it will be only online. So we do ask that if you are attending in person, you could just check online and make sure that there's no signs of illness, and you can read our COVID policy there. We continue to really respect the community and others who have people that they're looking after in their life as well as themselves. So we really want to ensure we all stay as healthy as we can. Coming up, I wanted to let you know that June 1st, which is the online event that I mentioned, will be held by Anne Mahoney, and it is why the heart practices are good for us. So this talk will focus on recent research looking at the influence of loving kindness and compassion, meditation on physical health, psychological health, and brain health. The next and final event for June before we break for summer, because we'll be off July and August, will be part 2 of Leslie's event tonight, which will be great. So highly encourage you to sign up for that as we deepen more into Leslie's topic, which is deepening mindfulness meditation practice. How relevant. So in the second series, Leslie will be focusing on meditation skills. We will learn how to deepen our capacity to calm our minds and relax our bodies. So hoping you all can join us for that. And of course, a reminder that all of these events are given freely and really are an invitation to learn from us and are not recommended to be used to deal with specific personal issues. That really our intention is for educational purposes, and that if you require additional support, we ask that you seek that out. So I happily introduce our lovely Dr. Leslie Ellestad, returning again to share her wisdom with us tonight. Leslie is actually a recently retired family physician. We were just briefly talking about how wonderful that is to have some additional time free up in her schedule. She had a private practice for over 35 years. As far as her meditation practice goes, she began practicing in 1998, has studied in the Tibetan insight and secular meditation traditions. She's inspired by the benefits of a long-term meditation practice. And if you've heard Leslie speak before and the wisdom that she shares, I know we all benefit from her deepening of her own practices and the wisdom that it brings that she continues to share with all of us. So with that, I will turn it over to Leslie.
Okay, so good evening, everybody. I'm very happy to be here with you this evening and with the people here in the hall. Meditation is a passion for me. I loved it the first time I tried it, and the love has grown every year, despite the ups and downs of practice. So I'm very fortunate that there are other people who are interested in it, because it's wonderful to share our passions. So thank you for joining this evening. So I wanted to start this evening by just talking about some of the things I've experienced in this very day that I probably notice now more than I would have in the past if I hadn't been a meditator. So for example, I spent some of the day helping my mom, who is elderly and has some medical issues. And in the past, I probably would have been focused on getting the job done, the driving, the assisting. But because I've meditated, I noticed all the kindness. And maybe you have always noticed kindness, but I have started to notice all the kindness of the people who are just, admitting you to the diagnostic radiology clinic, who walk you down the hall, and then the person who does a delicate examination on you and treats you with tenderness, or treats my mother with tenderness and kindness, and really being able to appreciate that. And then I was able to appreciate, the complexity of being human, in that my mom is experiencing one of the common challenges of aging, which is a stripping away of her memory, and how the person is still there, but the memory is gone or going, and how difficult that is in so many ways. So one of the things was, I told her where we're going to go for physio tomorrow because she has a back problem. And she said, "Tell me again." I was giving her some landmarks where it is. And she says, "I can't picture that. Where is that?" And she says, "My mind is just dissolving." This is being human. This is what can happen to us. And the beauty of it is that so many people care. That her children care, her friends care, and professional caregivers are available to help. So this is both the difficulty and the joy of being human and dealing with the realities of living. The other thing that I noticed was that my husband does the gardening at our house, which has worked out well. I did it for 25 years and then he took over. I think he's only done 10, so he's got 15 more to go to catch up to me. But we decided that we're best off if one of us does it, because otherwise we have disagreements as to what's a weed and what's a flower. So I had the good fortune of being invited out into the yard after he'd finished. And this is the most beautiful time of year in my book because of the blossoms. So I really took in the blossoms on the Mayday tree and the blossoms on the apple tree. both in our own yard and outside. And one of the things that happens with mindfulness is that I have been able to more fully sense what is actually around me that's beautiful. So I had a very nice day in doing that. And then another thing that I experienced was just the appreciation for the practice itself. I had the good fortune to spend several days doing an online home retreat over the last week or so. And during that retreat, there were deep experiences and changes in my body and my mind, just doing it by myself at home with online support. And the beauty there was this wonderful teacher, which many of you may have heard of, Joseph Goldstein. Just every sentence was a pearl of wisdom. And wow, this is such a rich tradition, and it does work over time. So that's what I wanted to start with. And then even more so than that is being here with friends, being here with you as friends in meditation world, and being here with Phil and with Christine, part of our team, and then with the people who are here in person. We are a web of people interested in meditation, and this is a wonderful thing that we can share. So just maybe pausing for a moment to appreciate your own interest in meditation and development of your own body and mind, honoring your commitment to that. And then sensing that there are others here who have that same interest and have benefited and will continue to benefit from their practice. And the next thing I wanted to do was to reflect on the quality of patience, because even though the practice is amazing and wonderful, it also requires a lot of patience because there's ups and downs in the practice. So to start with, I am going to read a poem called The Patience of Ordinary Things. And the poet is Pat Schneider. It is a kind of love, is it not? How the cup holds the tea, how the chair stands sturdy and foursquare, how the floor receives the bottom of shoes or toes, how soles of feet know where they're supposed to be. I've been thinking about the patience of ordinary things, how clothes wait respectfully in closets, and soap dries quietly in the dish, and towels drink the wet from the skin of the back, and the lovely repetition of stairs. And what is more generous than a window? So now I want to introduce the topic for this evening. So this topic is inspired by a study practice course that I took this year on what's called the Anapanasati Sutta, which is one of the three main practice discourses that the Buddha taught. And this is a discourse on breath meditation. So we were sent essays written on the topic and practices to do and some reflective writing to do. And then once a month, we would meet for a day long. And this was over the course of 8 months, plus we had a small group, a wonderful way to learn. And the topic is how to use breath meditation to lead to awakening. So this evening, we're going to be talking about how to stay on your anchor, most often the breath, but if that doesn't work for you, it might be some other anchor, most commonly the body or sound. So why is it important to develop the skill of being able to have sustained attention on one object? There's two main reasons. One is that the development of the mind is supported by the presence of certain factors that nourish the mind. So these factors are more likely to develop if the mind settles, if the mind settles and the body relaxes. So staying on one object is a very skillful way to get to a relaxed and alert state of mind and body. So in that relaxed state, these nourishing factors such as peacefulness, ease, joy, happiness, contentment, stability of mind, clarity of mind, these are more likely to develop. And those factors nourish our growing capacity to release ourselves from suffering. So the other reason, other than these nourishing factors, is that when the mind and the body settle, we can actually see what is happening. And if we can't see what is happening, it's hard to act wisely or to understand more deeply what is causing our suffering and what releases us from suffering. So the clarity of what we can see is supported by breath meditation and the ability to stay with our anchor. And as this clarity develops, we more easily see when we slip off and when we come back, and what gets in the way of us staying in a settled, contented state of mind. And I noticed after many years of meditating that the three main things that I slip off to is, number one, thinking about meditation instead of meditating. Number two, thinking about my habits, my patterns, instead of meditating. And number three, thinking about relationships and how I'd like them to change. So, true confessions. This is what I noticed. And the beauty is that even after so many years of practice, I improved by taking this course. I got more able to stay with my object and to catch myself more quickly, and it's helping my practice. I found this extremely exciting, but I am a very passionate person about meditation. So one of the things Joseph Goldstein said on a recent retreat, and this put this very clearly, he said, when we notice we have been distracted, we have moved from delusion to wisdom. Simple as that. If we don't know what's going on, we are deluded. If we aren't seeing clearly, we are deluded. And if we see clearly, we're moving at least towards wisdom. And what we mean by wisdom is then that we will make choices that tend to support the happiness of ourselves and the happiness of others. So think of it that way. You're moving from delusion to wisdom just by noticing that you stop paying attention to your breath. So it's really important. When we wander off, what's happening is that our habits are in charge. Our habits are in charge of our mind, and we have much less influence over the choices we make. And as I said, one of the topics of conversation in my head is thinking about my patterns. So it's not completely useless. It's helpful to see the patterns and understand them, but in order to unwind them and for them to diminish, it's important to stay in the moment rather than thinking about. And then the next thing I wanted to talk about before we get into the meditation practice is some attitudes that are helpful to have even before we start our sit. When we sit down on our chair or cushion for our hopefully daily sit or nearly daily sit, these are attitudes that Joseph Goldstein agrees with me about. At this retreat I just did, he listed them off and I said, that's exactly what I think. So I'm going to claim it as both my idea and Joseph Goldstein's idea. So number one is patience, which we've already talked about. So before I start meditating, I often will just invite patience, because even though my mind may not be calm when I first sit down, if I invite myself to be patient, it supports calm developing. And the second quality is perseverance. So perseverance is essential because meditation can be frustrating. It can have ups and downs in it, and difficult periods that seem like they go on for a fairly long period of time. We can have some habits that get in the way of our meditation being very effective, and we don't see them clearly. And then, it just seems to be frustrating. So keeping on going no matter what's happening. And Joseph Goldstein he says to himself, just keep sitting and walking. Don't get caught up too much in what's actually coming up. It's part of the practice, but the main thing is to persevere with the instructions. There's one of my teachers said, just follow the instructions. And the next thing is equanimity. So in this context, equanimity means being okay whether your experience is pleasant or unpleasant. So just this basic okayness. And this quality took me many years to develop because I have a nervous system that tends to go up quite fast, energetic-wise. And so being okay when you feel like you have a volcano in you that's erupting is pretty hard, but I'm getting there. Now I am, my volcano's down to a pimple. And that took many years. The next quality is friendliness. So basically we want to make ourselves a friend of our mind. This is very important because one of the things that comes up during meditation is aversion. Whether it's aversion to ourselves or aversion to others or aversion to meditation, aversion is a very common challenge in meditation. And if we add aversion to aversion, it makes it very difficult. So if we have this sense of, I've been meditating for so long and I still feel angry, or I still hate myself, then we're just we're adding salt to a wound. So I'm going to make my mind my friend, or I am making my mind my friend, could be a good phrase to have. And the last quality is the quality of a bodhisattva, which means the quality of knowing that when you're practicing, you're doing it not just for yourself, you're doing it for others as well. And it can seem like you're spending an awful lot of time on yourself when you develop a passion for your meditation practice. However, that time is of benefit to everyone you meet because the qualities that are developed through a long-term meditation practice are beneficial everywhere. Everywhere you go, you will be touching others with your kindness, with your calmness, with your wisdom, and with your caring, and this is invaluable. Okay, so the meat of what we're going to do today is to talk about 4 ways to connect with your breath. So I used to just go, oh, breath meditation, you just breathe and you just pay attention to it. Well, fascinatingly, there are 4 ways to do that. The first one is called recognizing the breath. So what do I mean by recognizing? This is what we're doing when we're teaching a 1-year-old what things are. We're saying, that's mama, that's papa, that's your dog, that's a ball, that's your cup. Everything is recognition of objects or actions. So just the brain recognizing what something is, or the mind, if you want to put it that way. So in this case, we're going to be recognizing an in-breath and recognizing an out-breath. And there's going to be a distinctness to it, a distinct moment in which we recognize the breath, and we'll practice this evening. The second function is the feeling or sensing capacity of awareness. So in the case of breath meditation, it's mostly to do with sensing the body, breathing in the body and the sensations that are arising. And we know that there are other senses So of course there's smell, there's taste, there's sound, there's sight, and then the body sensations. And we've already talked about cognition. So that's the 6 senses in Buddhism. So the feeling mode is a common way that people sense the breath. And then the third method is to observe the breath. So with our internal eye, some people call it the wisdom eye, we see ourselves doing things. And in this case, we're focusing on seeing ourselves breathing. And then the fourth way to experience the breath is awareness experiencing the breath itself. And this is when we let go of effort, or at least most of our effort, and we are being breathed. So we're going to go through this in a guided meditation. I would like you to guess before we start what you think is your current dominant way that you experience the breath. Are you a cognizer, a feeler, an observer, or a person who rests in awareness and gets breathed? And you may do all 4, or you may have a top one and a secondary one. But before we start, I'm just going to pause, and you make an educated guess from your experience what you've been doing in your practice. Okay. So now we're going to do our meditation practice. And as we usually do, we pay attention to our posture at the beginning of practice. So our posture supports our mind. So we want our posture to reflect what support the mind needs, which is to be alert and relaxed at the same time. So feet supported, or the bottom of the body supported, whether you're on a cushion or a chair. Connecting with the ground. And then the spine is upright, a sense of confidence in the spine. The head floating on top. Hands resting, whether on the thighs or in the lap. Inviting patience. Now connecting with the breath. Recognizing an in-breath as an in-breath. And an out-breath as an out-breath. Distinctly recognizing the in-breath and the out-breath. Now, distinctly recognizing the beginning of the in-breath and the beginning of the out-breath. And now, distinctly recognizing the ending of the in-breath and the ending of the out-breath. And now, recognizing the continuity between the beginning of the in-breath and the end of the out-breath. Okay, so pausing for a moment, that approach to breath meditation. And now we're going to move on to the feeling or the sensing of the breath. So starting again, and this time connecting with the sensations of breathing. The sensations of an in-breath and the sensations of an out-breath. Now notice where in the body you are most connected with the sensations of breathing. If you find that your mind is being drawn to a particular area of the body that you wouldn't normally associate as being related to the breath, bring your breathing with you to that area. There's a strong sensation that's calling you very powerfully toward it. Bring the in breath, bring the out breath with you. Continue to sense the in breath and the out breath. And is there any slight adjustment in the way that you're breathing or the way you are connecting to these sensations that brings more ease to the breath. Or if you're feeling drowsy, is there any way you can connect with the breath that helps you to be more alert? We are training our minds by how we meditate. Okay, so the next thing we will do is to observe our breathing. And so just taking a moment to pause. We're seeing our breath through our mind's eye, seeing it arise and seeing it pass away. Sometimes for myself, this seeing feels like it includes my body, but is a little bit outside my body. Kind of a looking into the body, feeling or sensing through the seeing rather than through sensations, the breath. If you're finding your breath is flowing and easeful, and there's a pleasant sensation, then really turn your attention towards that pleasantness while still including the breath, the observation of the breath, kind of leaning on the pleasantness. If your breath is getting tight or contracted, you may want to broaden the area in which you're paying attention to the breath. Add more space. And if you're feeling restless or agitated, it can be helpful to narrow the focus, maybe to the bottom of the belly, rise and fall of the belly. Or some people like to go to the tip of the nose. And then the last technique is to let go of any effort, inviting a sense of allowing yourself to be breathed. Releasing effort. Resting in the breath. So now we'll come to a close. I usually have a bell, but I seem to have it out of reach at the moment. So I'll bring my hands together and end the meditation with a bow. So just spend a few minutes reviewing your experience and see what showed up for you. What is your most natural way that you connect with breath that you've been using predominantly? And what might have been a little bit new to you? Or maybe something you'd like to explore. And then I'd like to invite those of you online to type into the chat a couple of short phrases, perhaps, about what you noticed. And then those here, I'd like you to consider, if you feel comfortable doing it, to form a little 3-person group. And I'm going to give you a timing on a minute each to talk about what you experienced. So just go in a a triangle, and we're going to do the same while those online just talk to each other in the chat.
There we go.
Okay.
You're ready.
I hope you can hear me. Let me know if you can't. So we'll invite our in-person people to come back. They were having a good conversation, and so were the presenters up here. So there was a question about, I'm just going to look at the questions that came up already in the chat. So we're heading towards the Q&A. I am going to read a poem again before we actually fully close this part, but just what's here right now is a question about information on retreats, and that particular retreat was at Insight Meditation Society. They are running some online retreats, and it's called, you look up Dharma, DHARMA.org, and you get information about that. There are online retreats run by many different organizations, but that one in particular was run by there. More locally, we have CalgaryIMS.org that puts on retreats, and they do also provide information about other communities that put on retreats here in Alberta. And then in BC, British Columbia, there is a BCIMS, and they put on a lot of online teachings. So that would be a resource as well. At the end of the evening, I will do some typing into the chat to address that. So just for the people who are here, I'm going to read a few of the things. I probably won't get all of them, but this is what the chat says. People said on the chat, they felt they had better detachment than usual, better able to let go of effort and be breathed, conscientious of my breathing more than letting my breath come and go. Somebody felt calm and balanced. Someone felt so calm they fell asleep. We had someone up here at the front who's jet lagged, who almost fell asleep. And someone found it easy to have awareness of the process of breathing. And some people were wondering why it was so quiet. That's because we were on mute, because we were talking and we didn't want you to hear everything we said. We didn't actually want to disturb your concentration. And somebody said it was focusing on the awareness was difficult for me to concentrate on. So that's what's in the chat. And then just to bring us back into a sense of completeness for the evening, I have another poem by the same poet. And it's a surprise to me because I have this big book of poetry, and I happened to pick out two poems, and then I noticed they were both by the same author. So this one's called Instructions for the Journey. It says, the self you leave behind is only a skin you have outgrown. Don't grieve for it. Look to the wet, raw, unfinished self, the one you are becoming. The world, too, sheds its skin. Politicians, cataclysms, ordinary days. It's easy to lose this tenderly unfolding moment. Look for it, as if it were the first green blade after a long winter. Listen for it, as if it were the first clear tone in a place where the dawn is heralded by bells. And if all that fails, wash your own dishes. Rinse them. Stand in your kitchen at your sink. Let cold water run between your fingers. Feel it. Okay, so thank you very much for listening. I've really enjoyed preparing this topic. It kind of evolved in my mind over the course of several weeks, and then took a week or two to put onto paper. So we will move on to a Q&A, and also any further sharing you would like to do. And the people online are invited to ask to be unmuted and could speak to the whole room here. But I am going to start, because we have tended to sometimes start with the people online and then only leave a little bit of the time for the people in the room. And so I'm just going to check with the people in the room if they have any questions, and I am going to repeat their question before it gets answered. Yes, and their observations from their trio chat. Yeah. Anything you would like to share?
I have been feeling sensitive because of the smoke. So doing a breathing exercise was very interesting because I've been trying to hold my breath a lot. So this is interesting because I felt tickling happening in my lungs, waiting for cough, but no coughing. That was interesting. The other thing was I really loved as well. I like the way the 4 steps are broken down. For me, that was an interesting addition to recognize the end of the breath in or out. So that's really cool. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just going to repeat for the people online. So one of our participants has been sensitive to the smoke and recognized that she was doing the breath meditation, that she has been holding her breath for 2 days. And so it was an interesting experience to even notice maybe, if I'm correct, I sense there was a little more freedom in your breath through, yeah. And then she was commenting on her enjoying the breaking down process that we did through the meditation instruction, and particularly noticing the end of the breath, the in-breath, and the end of the out-breath. So that's the comment. And I would like to add to that comment about noticing endings. That was one of the insights I had at a certain point in my practice, is that I was ignoring endings. I was really into the beginnings of things, but ignoring endings. And that's where the mind can get kind of like lost in thought, because it takes off from, a body sensation or an emotion and gets stimulated to start thinking. So staying through the whole experience of whatever is arising can be very helpful for the development of your practice, and decrease the tendency to get into a lot of proliferation of thought. It's called papancha in the tradition. The other thing I would say about it is that there's as meditation develops, we start to have what are called purification cycles. So something will be loosened up, softened up, and it will arise and come into the stream of consciousness. Can be a little challenging. And one of my teachers said, so it comes in a cycle, and try to notice that you're in a cycle. It's not just like your mind just went crazy, or that how come today's such a difficult day and yesterday was a really good day. Is that there's a purification process going, and whatever is arising is passing through your system. And so starting to notice the beginnings of those cycles and the ends of those cycles, and then the beginning of like a really pleasant cycle, and then that one goes away, and then you think, what the heck is going on here? And that's what's going on. You're being purified. That's one word to use. You're being cleansed, or the suffering is reducing in little cycles. All right, so anything else from the audience here?
Question. Which phase or stage was that, and start and end of your breath? Was that third?
I think I used it mostly in the first section, which was the recognizing the breath.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else anyone wants to add?
I was I've been focusing on the in-breath, and this is interesting, the topic, and then the connecting, recognizing the continuity.
Yes.
The in-breath, beginning, the end, which goes into the beginning, the end of the out-breath.
Yes.
And then I was getting a little sleepy. So I was trying to get back to the in-breath and out-breath.
Yes.
So, yeah. It seems that I've sort of got that monkey brain happening this week.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm just working hard at trying to bring it back.
Bring it back.
Yeah.
Yes, so we have a comment from one of our participants here that their experience is that they've been working on the continuity from in-breath to out-breath and keeping on. And that this evening there was a lot of sleepiness, or there was some sleepiness, and that it was helpful to have that reminder to deal with the sleepiness, to come back to the breath. And that there's been some monkey mind for her this week. So this is maybe what some of you are experiencing as well. It's good to talk to other meditators because then you know your experience is shared by others. Okay, anybody have anything else, or anyone in up here at the front have anything you want to say?
So, I mean, Leslie is saving everything for the next session as well, but just a few other ways to help sustain awareness on the breath. There's the counting, which we're all aware of, and there are different ways to count, but whenever you can bring another element to attention, that helps. So in one, out one, etc. Two is saying in when you breathe in and out when you breathe out. Three, and Leslie talked about this, that really we're doing mostly spontaneous breathing, that we are being breathed by our body. But in some traditions, they actually will consciously emphasize exhalation as a way of trying to sustain focusing on the breath and relaxation. And one last factor is, for me, what I've discovered is the value of the pause at the end of exhalation. That pause tends to be a bit more prolonged than the pause at the inhalation. And I think the reason why it'd be interesting to what you think, the reason why we drift is because, in-breath, something to follow, out-breath, something to follow. And then we get to pause and there's nothing to follow. And we look at pause at the end of exhalation as nothingness. But in reality, pause is somethingness, that there is something to the pause. And personally, when I have maintained my focus on the inhalation, exhalation, and deliberately looked for the pause, I find I can sustain continuity more. And it also tends to, because I'm sustaining the pause, I really am emptying my body of breath. And it really tends to accentuate the inhalation. So I don't know if you've really looked at the pause as a way of sustaining continuity. What do you think? What's been your observation?
We're going to pass it over to Christine.
The pause, for me, Phil, has been an interesting exploration because I remember learning that early on. And actually, I found myself striving for it and trying to create it when that actually wasn't part of my cycle. And it actually was an indicator for me to recognize where I was striving then within the breath. So it became its own teacher. And that I found that the more I actually paid attention, opened up to the breath to be what it wanted versus creating or extending or trying to balance or different things that teachers were maybe suggesting at the time, I was actually then able to find the pause. So I invite that to say, when we actually open our awareness to how the body wants to breathe itself, that maybe those moments of the pause and their invitation may be there.
Okay, so now we'll look at some of the questions in the chat. Why do we need a community to practice meditation? So there are some people who don't need a community. There is a tradition of the solitary meditator. but usually they've had some training before they go off and be solitary. But most people need a community because they need the teaching. So they need to hear the teaching from the voice of another, and they benefit. Many people benefit from talking to other meditators about practice, and then are motivated by that they have like a meditation buddy or group of buddies. It helps stimulate them to keep the practice going. And then also there's an energetic support for practice just by meditating with other people. So in a community of meditators, over time, there develops just this power of the whole group practice, and it makes it easier to meditate. So when I go on some of the retreats that I go on, you just walk into the meditation hall and you go, it's like you're in a meditation bath, and there's all this energy that supports the mind settling and concentration, a collectedness of mind, an ease, a sense of warmth and being held by the energy in the hall. So lots of benefits. There's also challenges with being part of a community. If you haven't noticed, people are one of our main challenges. Sometimes we like them and sometimes we don't.
Back to relationships. Third thing you notice.
So this is both a challenge and an opportunity, because ultimately, if we are able to develop, whether people are likable to us or unlikable to us, our mind will develop the ability to be less disturbed by it. And so when or as Joseph Goldstein said last week, he gets very interested when he's suffering. So whether it's another person or our own internal experience that's stimulating suffering, this is an opportunity for practice. So seeing who we're drawn to and who we're drawn to get away from, we learn about ourselves primarily. So attending a retreat is particularly valuable because of the level of instruction that may be provided, there's community support, and then the longer period of continuity of mindfulness deepens the practice and supports the speed with which one awakens or becomes free. So some of the people get really into it, like right off the bat. In the United States, there's these 2 large centers where people go for 1, 2, or 3 month retreats. And I've talked to people or heard them talk. They often become teachers because they're so passionate about it, that do a 2-week retreat, and then the next retreat they do is 3 months long. So like they're just like turned on by it and they go after it. And one teacher who was talking this last week said she did 2 3-month retreats, and then she did a year-long retreat. Yeah, all alone in a cabin. Sounds like it was really hard. So yeah, but she wanted to have a kid, and she thought she better do the year-long retreat before having a child, and she was very smart to do that. Because you got about 18 years to go before you can go on a long retreat after you have children. What was your reference to it says bony, but I think that means body. Earlier inviting ourselves. I'm not 100% sure what's being referred to there.
It's one of the 4 aspects of meditation. The breath.
The sensing of the body, the body sensations of breathing. I did refer to that. And I at the beginning of the meditation, I emphasized posture as a support for the mind. So the upright posture and the relaxed posture. And touching each other with kindness. So one of the supports for being in a group practice is sensing that other people are there, and then opening our hearts to connection with others as we're practicing. That is something of what I said. I'm hoping I'm addressing that question. All right, so.
Are there any questions here in the room? I have a question.
Okay.
Honestly. So in the beginning, when you spoke about bringing the attitude of patience to our practice, because we can tend to find aversion or frustration, different things arise. Can you, and you did mention, I think you wrote, or I wrote down here that you do like to invite patience before you start.
Mm-hmm.
So can you maybe talk a little bit about what that means to you in your practice, where you're inviting that state of being, and yet, in our mindfulness practice, we're taught actually to welcome all the states of being as they're here. So when we come in, holding something else, when actually impatience is here, how are we supporting ourselves?
Good, very good question. So the question I hope everybody heard was, seems to be, I'm going to say what I think I heard, and I hope I heard it right, that there seems to be a paradox here that mindfulness is about being present with whatever's present, whatever's arising. And I suggested we invite patience even before we start. So I'm trying to tinge the water with patience. And this is because we need something nourishing to begin, or it can be wise to have nourishment for the mind before we begin, because there are certain tendencies in the mind towards negativity. It's a natural way that we're put together. So inviting something encouraging to the mind can be very helpful, which means that if you're actually feeling impatient, you can be patient with your impatience. It's not that you're trying to pretend or erase what's actually there. It's that you're trying to create a container that can hold what's actually there without getting further traumatized by what's actually there, or further engaged with it, and going down the path of increasing the aversion because you're noticing the aversion. So that's what I would say. Does that work?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because, and I think you're also speaking, to some of the attitudes of mindfulness, that we can bring curiosity in the beginner's mind, and is there that invitation to ourselves? And we were talking about this here in the room earlier, what intention we may be bringing to our practice. And that can actually be a really healthy way of just checking in with ourselves to say, well, what is here tonight? Mm-hmm. And when we sit down, then really, maybe there is an intention to better support ourselves in a way that actually helps to grow and foster the practice too. Yes. So yeah. I love that. Mm-hmm.
Leslie, when we think about meditation and breath, we're talking about concentration as opposed to insight.
Yeah.
So concentration can either be focused awareness or open monitoring. Can you talk to those two types of breath awareness as a way of meditating?
So Phil, I hope you heard it, was bringing up the point about the topic of concentration, and he sees it as being two options of a focused awareness or an open monitoring type of concentration. And my way of looking at concentration is to see it as the mind is collected and settled. So when the mind is collected and settled, the hindrances, the difficult states of mind are absent. Whatever way we use to get to that state of mind is skillful for us at that particular time. And one of the ways is to start by a focused awareness on a particular object. And the breath in this case that we're talking about tonight. Now, this sutta that we've just done has 16 stanzas, so 4 lines in each stanza. And the whole last stanza is about what Phil is referring to as awareness itself and the releasing that starts to happen. So as meditation practice progresses, then the release during practice is there's it's important to get out of the way and let the practice do the releasing rather than fiddling with awareness. But you need to do the effortful practice at the beginning to develop enough capacity that there is a concentrated or collected and somewhat nourished mind state that the releasing is going to happen. So that's how I would address that question. Yeah. Okay, let me see if there's anything else in the chat. After the version of ourselves getting complicated. I may have forgotten what I said. Uh-oh.
What's the question?
It was in reference to early the version of ourselves getting complicated. Yeah, getting caught up is another way that can sometimes be said, that we believe what we're thinking and we go off on a thought train. Oh, I said something about papancha. I'm not sure if that is what you were talking about. That's when there's an energy, an emotion, a body sensation, and they are usually a recorded memory of some sort that stimulates certain thoughts, like that person did this to me, and why did they do it? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with them? What am I going to do about it? You know, that sort of papancha. Or, you know, I'm kind of bored here. Let me, you know, I want to get unbored. What's my next vacation going to be? Where am I going to go? That's desire in the mind. I'm getting nowhere in this meditation. What's wrong with my practice? Why do I have such lousy teachers? They aren't giving me the right instructions. Or I'm no good at this, I should just give up. That's papancha. Instead of going back to, I'm feeling frustrated. Let's be with frustration. Well, how do I be with frustration? That's where it's very helpful just to get right down to the base of what's stimulating the thinking, and let go of the thoughts, come back to the emotional patterned source. And then we get to know our patterns really well, and we live with them for quite a long time before they thin out, but they do thin out with a dedicated practice over time. Believe it or not, Phil.
Thank you, Leslie. So we have a couple more minutes, and maybe you can just give us your summary of your talk, those key points that you'd like to emphasize for us to take away and remember. But I will also say this has been recorded, so if you would like to return to the practice at any time, you'll be able to come to our website and enjoy it again and again.
Okay, so in summary, using the breath as an anchor, or whatever our anchor is, can be done in 4 different ways, as we talked about, with the cognizing capacity, the sensing capacity, the observing capacity of mind, and awareness itself. And each of these methods help us to gradually grow our capacity to have a collected and nourished state of mind, which supports us in our long-term goal of freedom from suffering. So I'm very happy to have shared this with you and encourage you on your path, and look forward to meeting with you in the future. And next time we have Anne Mahoney talking about the practice of loving kindness, and then I'll come back to talk about how to calm the mind, a particular way to look at calming the body and the mind. And there were surprises for me, even after 25 years of meditating, at realizing I didn't know everything there was to know about how to calm the mind. Yeah.
Okay,
So,
thank you, Leslie.
Yeah.
I'm gonna slide it over here to me one more time. So thank you all for joining us tonight. I am gonna put in the chat, as I mentioned, a link to our website if you would feel called to provide any donations. We happily receive that. I'd also just send out an invite to those that are here and those that are online, that we really do see the value of our community and the teachings that we bring. And if you would like to maybe share it with a friend or a family member, I mean, referrals are our greatest source of, building our community. So if you felt called to do that, we would appreciate that as well. Any way that we can continue to get the word out about what we're doing and what's to come, we'd appreciate it. And again, a big thank you to you, Leslie, for all the wisdom tonight that you brought us, and of course the practice. It's really wonderful. And I'm going to actually share Leslie's book if anyone's interested here. This is The Poetry of Presence, which is a beautiful book. There's plenty of inspiration in this book if you would like to explore more. So thank you all. And again, please join us in 2 weeks as we welcome our next speaker, Anne Mahoney. Good night, everyone.